It all began with the silence. Not the peaceful, comforting silence of a suburban Sunday morning, but a heavy, oppressive quiet that seemed to swallow all other sounds. My life, until that point, had been a meticulously constructed fortress of normalcy. I'm Dr. Daniel Alankar, a cardiologist. I deal in heartbeats, in the steady, rhythmic pump of life. My world is one of data, of echocardiograms and stress tests. I believe in what I can measure, what I can see and touch. The supernatural, to me, was the stuff of late-night movies and campfire stories, a quaint collection of human anxieties given form. My routine was my religion. Wake at 6, a brisk run through the manicured streets of our quiet Curitiba neighborhood, a long day at the hospital wrestling with mortality in its most clinical form, and then home to the sterile comfort of my modern apartment. I'd recently moved in, a decision prompted by a divorce that had surgically removed a decade of my life. The apartment was my fresh start, all clean lines, polished chrome, and minimalist furniture. It was a space devoid of history, a blank slate, or so I believed. My only vulnerability was a profound, unacknowledged loneliness, a silence in my life that I tried to fill with work and routine. The first crack in my reality appeared on a Tuesday night. It was a sound, so faint I almost dismissed it as a trick of the tired mind. A soft weeping, like a child crying in a distant room. I paused, the medical journal in my lap forgotten. The building was new, the soundproofing excellent. I'd never heard my neighbors before. I walked to the window, peering down at the empty, rain-slicked street. The sound was gone. I chalked it up to fatigue, the city playing tricks on me. The rational mind is an expert at self-deception. A few days later, it was a scent. A cloying, sweet smell of jasmine that filled the living room for a fleeting moment before vanishing. It was out of place, an organic intrusion into my sanitized world. I checked for air fresheners I might have forgotten, looked for any logical source. There was none. It was just a phantom fragrance that left an unsettling residue in the air. Then, things began to move. A book I was certain I had left on the coffee table appeared neatly placed on the bookshelf. The remote control, which I always kept in a specific drawer, would be sitting on the kitchen counter. Trivial things, easily explained away. I must have been more tired than I thought, I'd muttered to myself. Absent-minded, my skepticism was a shield, and I clung to it desperately. I was a man of science. I understood the brain's capacity to create illusions, to fill in the gaps with phantom stimuli, especially under stress. And the divorce had certainly been a stressor. I was simply projecting my inner turmoil onto my environment. It was a perfectly logical, perfectly sane explanation. But the feeling of being watched began to grow, a persistent prickling on the back of my neck that defied any rationalization. It was strongest in the evenings, when the city lights painted long, distorted shadows across my walls. I started leaving the television on for company, the mindless chatter of a late-night talk show, a flimsy barrier against the encroaching silence. The apartment, once my sanctuary of control, was beginning to feel alien, like a space that was not entirely my own. I was losing control, not of my reality, but of my perception of it. And for a man like me, that was the most terrifying thought of all. The subtle incursion had begun, and the foundations of my carefully built world were starting to crumble, grain by single, terrifying grain. The turning point, the moment my shield of skepticism shattered into a million pieces, came a week later. I was asleep, deep in the dreamless void that follows an exhausting shift. A sound jolted me awake. Not the weeping this time, but a single, sharp whisper right beside my ear. It was a woman's voice, laced with a desperate, chilling urgency. It spoke just one word: help. I shot upright in bed, my heart hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird. My clinical mind instantly registered the symptoms: tachycardia, cold sweat, adrenaline surge, a textbook panic attack. But this was different. The voice had been too real, too clear. The air in the room was icy cold, a stark contrast to the mild spring night outside. And the scent of jasmine was back, thick and suffocating. I turned on the lights, my hand trembling, and scanned the empty room. Nothing. No one. just the familiar shapes of my furniture, now looking menacing and strange in the harsh light. I was alone, but I knew with a certainty that defied all logic that I wasn't. Sleep became a luxury I could no longer afford. The nights were a gauntlet of whispers, cold spots, and that persistent floral scent. My work began to suffer. My colleagues noticed my fatigue, the dark circles under my eyes. "Everything okay, Daniel?" my friend and fellow cardiologist Marcos asked one afternoon. He was the ultimate skeptic, a man who believed only in scalpels and statistics. "You look like you've seen a ghost." I forced a laugh, the sound hollow and brittle. If only he knew. My desperation for answers led me to the internet, the modern oracle for the damned. I typed in the address of my building, my fingers fumbling on the keyboard. I scrolled past real estate listings and tenant reviews, digging deeper, and then I found it. A small news article from a local Curitiba paper, dated 6 months prior, just before I moved in. The headline sent a jolt of ice through my veins. "Young woman found murdered in luxury apartment." I read the article with a growing sense of dread. The victim was a 28-year-old woman named Livia Suarez. She was a journalist, and she had been found in her apartment. My apartment. The cause of death was listed as inconclusive, pending further investigation, but the police suspected foul play. There were no signs of forced entry. The case was cold, a loose thread in the city's tapestry of crime. The article included a picture of her. She was beautiful, with kind, intelligent eyes and a warm smile. A wave of nausea washed over me. I wasn't just living in a stranger's former home. I was living in a crime scene. The whispers in the apartment began to change. They were no longer just pleas for help. They were fragments, disjointed words forming a spectral puzzle. "The locket," I heard one night. The voice as clear as if someone were standing beside me. His hands, so cold. The weeping became more intense, filled with a palpable sense of betrayal and pain. This wasn't my imagination. This was Livia. The isolation was crushing. Who could I tell? Marcos would have me committed. My family would think I was having a breakdown after the divorce. I was completely, utterly alone with this horrifying secret. My fortress of normalcy had been breached, and the reality I was now facing was a nightmare from which I couldn't wake up. There was no escape, because the source of the terror wasn't just in my apartment, it was intrinsically linked to it. The key, I realized, was Livia's death. The entity haunting me wasn't a malevolent force. It was a victim, crying out for justice. And for some reason, I was the only one who could hear her. The thought brought me no comfort. It was a terrifying burden. I had to know more. I had to understand what happened in this place. My desperate investigation had begun, not just to solve a mystery, but to save my own sanity. My search for answers became an obsession. During the day, I was Dr. Alencar, the composed professional. But at night, I was a desperate man poring over the digital ghost of Livia Suarez. Her social media profiles were still active, frozen in time. They painted a picture of a vibrant, ambitious woman. Photos of her with friends in Barigui Park. Articles she had written for a local news outlet, passionate posts about social justice. There was nothing to suggest a dark side, no hint of the violence that had ended her life. One name kept appearing in her posts, a man named Ricardo. He was handsome, charismatic, a successful real estate developer. In the photos, they looked happy, the perfect couple. According to the comments, they had been engaged. I dug deeper, searching for his name in connection with the case. He had been questioned, of course. He had an alibi, a business dinner with several influential people. He had publicly mourned her, calling her the love of his life and demanding justice. He was ruled out as a suspect. My search led me to an old online forum for local journalists. I found a thread discussing Livia's death. Most of it was speculation, but one comment stood out. It was from a user named Veritas, who claimed Livia had been working on a big story before she died, an expose on corruption in the city's construction industry. She was getting close to something dangerous. The thread died soon after, with Veritas making one final cryptic post. They silenced her. Look into Ricardo's company, Phoenix Holdings. Follow the money, Phoenix Holdings. Ricardo's company. I spent hours navigating a labyrinth of corporate records and financial statements. It was a dead end. The company was clean, at least on the surface. Frustrated, I felt like I was chasing shadows. The whispers in the apartment grew more insistent. "The box," she would plead. "In the floor. His gift." His gift? A box in the floor? I remembered the loose floorboard under the rug in the bedroom closet. The previous owner, Livia, had complained about it, according to the building manager when I moved in. I had meant to get it fixed. My heart pounding, I pulled back the rug and used a screwdriver to pry the board loose. Underneath, nestled in the dark space, was a small, ornate wooden box. My hands trembled as I lifted it out. It wasn't locked. Inside, nestled on a bed of faded velvet, was a silver locket, just as the voice had whispered. But there was something else. A USB drive. With a sense of impending doom, I plugged the drive into my laptop. It contained a single folder protected by a password. I tried everything I could think of. Livia's birthday, Ricardo's name, Phoenix. Nothing worked. That night, the activity in the apartment escalated. The weeping was constant, a heartbreaking symphony of despair. Objects moved more boldly. A glass flew off the counter and shattered against the wall. The word liar was scrawled in the condensation on the bathroom mirror. The cold was unbearable. This was no longer a plea for help. It was a desperate, angry scream. She was frustrated with my inability to understand. I confided in Marcos. I had to. I cornered him in the hospital cafeteria, my voice low and urgent. I told him everything, the whispers, the moving objects, the news article, the box. I watched his face shift from concern to pity. "Daniel," he said softly, placing a hand on my shoulder. "You're under a lot of stress. The divorce, the new place. It's taking a toll. Maybe you should talk to someone, a professional." His words were a physical blow. The one person I thought might believe me, my anchor to the rational world, saw me as broken, as crazy. The isolation was now absolute. I was a man trapped between two worlds, one that refused to believe me and one that refused to let me go. That night, defeated, I sat in the dark, the silver locket in my hand. I opened it. On one side was a picture of Livia, smiling. On the other, a tiny, almost illegible engraving. I needed a magnifying glass to read it. It was a date. Not a birthday, not an anniversary I could find online. It was just a sequence of numbers. On a whim, I typed the numbers into the password field for the USB drive. Access granted. The folder opened, revealing dozens of documents, spreadsheets, and recorded phone calls. It was Livia's investigation. She had uncovered a massive scheme. Ricardo's company, Phoenix Holdings, was a front for a money laundering operation run by a powerful criminal faction in the city. They were using construction projects to wash dirty money. The documents implicated city officials, police officers, and powerful businessmen. Livia had it all. The phone calls were the most damning. I listened, my blood running cold, as Ricardo discussed the scheme with his partners. He wasn't just a part of it. He was a key player. The final file was a video, recorded on a laptop webcam. It was Livia. She looked terrified, her eyes darting towards the door. "If you're seeing this," she began, her voice shaking, "it's because something has happened to me. It's Ricardo. He found out I know. He's not the man everyone thinks he is. He's a monster." She held up the locket to the camera. "He gave me this, the date inside. It's the founding date of his first shell corporation. He was so arrogant, he hid the proof in plain sight." A noise from off-camera made her jump. The apartment door opened. Ricardo walked in, his charming smile gone, replaced by a mask of cold fury. "What is this, Livia?" he asked, his voice deceptively calm. "Finishing your little story?" The camera fell, capturing only the floor and the sound of a struggle, a sickening thud, and then silence. I stared at the screen, my mind reeling. The pure, undiluted terror of that moment washed over me. This wasn't a ghost story anymore. It was the story of a brutal murder, and the killer was a man everyone admired, a man who walked free. Livia wasn't just haunting me, she was pointing me to her killer, and now I held the proof. The full, horrifying truth was laid bare, and with it came the sickening realization of my own impotence. I was a doctor, not a detective. What could I do against a man so powerful, so ruthless? The truth hadn't set me free. It had just shown me the true size of the cage I was in, and I was trapped inside with the ghost of a murdered woman who would not rest until she had her justice. The revelation changed everything. The apartment was no longer just a haunted space. It was a tomb, and I was its unwilling caretaker. The entity of Livia was no longer a nebulous presence, but a constant, demanding companion. The subtle whispers and cold spots gave way to overt, terrifying displays. The boundary between my reality and her nightmare had dissolved completely. One evening, I was making coffee, my hands still shaking from rewatching the video, when the television flickered on by itself. It wasn't tuned to a normal channel, but to static. From the white noise, her voice emerged, no longer a whisper, but a clear, commanding tone that filled the room. "Make him pay." The lights flickered violently, and every electronic device in the apartment whirred to life in a chaotic symphony of noise. The message was clear. My time for passive investigation was over. Fear became my constant state of being. I saw Ricardo everywhere, in the faces of strangers on the street, in the cars that seemed to follow me home from the hospital. Paranoia was a fever in my blood. I knew what he was capable of. I had seen it. Going to the police was a death sentence. The files Livia had collected implicated several high-ranking officers. I was a doctor with a wild story about a ghost and a USB drive found in his floorboards. They would either dismiss me as insane, or worse, alert Ricardo that the evidence he thought was gone had resurfaced. My relationship with Marcos disintegrated. He called, concerned, but I couldn't bring myself to answer. How could I explain that the ghost of the woman who died in my apartment was now demanding I avenge her? He would have me institutionalized. My family, sensing my distress, tried to reach out, but I pushed them away. Their rational world had no place for my horrifying new reality. The more Livia's presence consumed my life, the more isolated I became from the world of the living. Her attacks grew more personal, more psychological. She began to use my own memories against me. I would walk into the bedroom and for a fleeting second, see my ex-wife standing there, her face contorted with the same expression of betrayal Livia wore in her final moments. The apartment, my supposed blank slate, became a canvas for my deepest fears and regrets, all orchestrated by a spirit fueled by rage and grief. Desperate for a way to fight back, I started researching the occult, folklore, anything that could offer a solution. I read about cleansing rituals, protective symbols, ways to help a trapped spirit find peace. One night, I tried to reason with her. I lit a candle and spoke into the empty room, my voice trembling. "Livia, I know what he did to you. I have the proof. But I'm just one man. I'm afraid. Please, you have to give me time." My plea was answered with violence. The bedroom door slammed shut with such force that the frame splintered. The temperature plummeted, and I could see my breath fogging in the air. A furious whirlwind erupted in the room, sending books and papers flying. On the wall opposite me, deep scratches appeared, carving a single word into the plaster. Now. This was the lesson, learned through pure terror. Her quest for justice had consumed her. She wasn't just a victim seeking peace. She was an entity of vengeance, and she would not be patient. She had chosen me as her instrument, and my fear, my hesitation, my very survival were irrelevant. My attempt at fighting back had only made things worse. I realized I couldn't banish her. I couldn't reason with her. My only path to survival was to do what she wanted. I had to expose Ricardo. My frantic search for a way out led me back to the journalists' forum. I found the user, Veritas, and sent a desperate, anonymous message, hinting that I had Livia's final story. To my astonishment, he replied. He was an older, retired journalist named Afonso, a mentor to Livia. He had always been suspicious of Ricardo and the official story. He knew Livia was onto something dangerous. We agreed to meet. The meeting was my first desperate step, a gamble that could either save me or get me killed. I was no longer a doctor. I was a conspirator, a pawn in a dead woman's game. My sanity was fraying, my connection to my old life severed. I was losing myself, becoming a reflection of the ghost that haunted me, driven by obsession and fear. The escalation was complete. I was now an active participant in the horror. The confrontation was inevitable. Afonso, with his weary eyes and network of trusted contacts, confirmed my worst fears. The corruption ran deep. Handing the evidence over to the authorities was not an option. If we release this, Ricardo will bury it, and then he'll bury us, he said, his voice grim. We need a plan. We need to leak it to a national news agency, all at once, create a firestorm he can't control. The plan was set for a Friday night. I was to meet Afonso at a secluded cafe with the USB drive. He would then pass it to a contact from a major news outlet in São Paulo. It was my one shot at freedom. Freedom from Ricardo, and, I prayed, freedom from Livia. That Friday, the atmosphere in the apartment was electric. The air was thick with a palpable tension, a quiet hum of anticipation. For the first time in weeks, there were no whispers, no cold spots. It was a silence more unnerving than the chaos. It felt like the calm before a storm, as if Livia was holding her breath, waiting. I copied the files onto a second encrypted drive as a precaution, my heart a frantic drum against my ribs. I slipped the original into my pocket, a tiny piece of plastic that held the power to destroy lives, including my own. As I was about to leave, my phone rang. It was Marcos. "Daniel, for God's sake, where have you been?" he pleaded. "Listen to me. I was worried. I did some digging on your apartment building. I have a friend in the police department, the woman who died there. Daniel, the case wasn't cold. It was closed. They ruled it a suicide." The blood drained from my face. A suicide. They had covered it up completely. "Marcos, you don't understand," I stammered. "It was him. It was Ricardo." Before he could reply, the line went dead. The lights in the apartment went out, plunging me into absolute darkness. My phone was dead. The silence was broken by a single soft click, the sound of the front door's deadbolt sliding shut. I was not alone. A silhouette stood in the doorway to the living room, backlit by the faint glow of the city outside. It was Ricardo. His charming smile was plastered on his face, a grotesque mask that didn't reach his cold, dead eyes. "Dr. Alencar," he said, his voice smooth as silk. "I believe you have something of mine." Panic seized me. How did he know? Had he been watching me all this time? "I don't know what you're talking about," I said, my voice barely a whisper. He took a step forward, and the scent of jasmine, Livia's scent, suddenly flooded the room, thick and suffocating. "Don't play games with me," Ricardo snarled, his mask of civility dropping. "She told me. She's been whispering to me too, ever since you found her little box. She thought she could use you, but she underestimated our connection." My mind fractured. Livia had been talking to him. It was a trap. She hadn't led me to justice. She had led me to her killer, delivering me like a sacrificial lamb. A profound, soul-crushing despair washed over me. I was a pawn in a game played by ghosts and monsters. Suddenly, the temperature in the room dropped to freezing. A low moan echoed from the bedroom, a sound of pure, unadulterated rage. It wasn't the sound of Livia the victim. It was the sound of something else entirely. The lights flickered back on, but they cast a sickly, wavering glow. Ricardo looked towards the sound, a flicker of fear in his eyes. "She can be a bit dramatic," he muttered. This was my chance. I bolted for the kitchen, fumbling for a knife, anything. But Ricardo was faster. He tackled me, and we crashed to the floor. His hands were around my throat, cold and strong, just as her whispers had described. My vision started to tunnel. Then, the apartment erupted. The windows shattered inwards. The furniture was thrown against the walls by an unseen force. Ricardo was ripped off me, lifted into the air as if by an invisible hand. He screamed, a raw, terrified sound. The ethereal form of Livia appeared, but she was changed. Her face was a twisted mask of fury, her eyes glowing with a malevolent light. This was not the sad, gentle victim from the photographs. This was a thing of pure vengeance. "You promised," she shrieked, her voice a chorus of overlapping whispers. "You promised me forever, and you left me here alone." "I loved you," Ricardo choked out, clawing at the air. "You loved my silence," she screamed. The room shook violently. She hurled him against the wall with sickening force. He crumpled to the ground, a broken mess. She descended upon him, her ghostly form flickering, and then the lights went out for good. The last thing I heard was his gurgling scream, and then a final, wet, tearing sound. When the emergency services arrived, alerted by neighbors who heard the commotion, they found me in the corner, catatonic, clutching the USB drive. Ricardo was dead, his body horrifically mangled in a way the police couldn't explain. They found the files on the drive. The story exploded. The corruption scandal rocked the city. Ricardo was posthumously declared a monster, the killer who got what he deserved. I survived, but survival is not the same as being whole. They said I suffered a psychotic break due to stress. They explained away the impossible events of that night with words like gas leaks and structural anomalies. I never told them the truth. Who would believe me? I live in a new city now, in a small ground floor apartment with no history. But the scar remains. Every night, when the silence gets too deep, I can still smell a faint trace of jasmine on the air. And sometimes, in the dead of night, I hear a whisper. It's not Livia's voice anymore. It's something else. The truth I learned is that when you open a door to that other world, other things can see you. Livia didn't just want justice. She wanted company. And in the end, she got it. The mal wasn't defeated. It was just passed on. And I am left with the terrifying knowledge that I am no longer alone, and I will never be safe again. The real horror isn't that ghosts exist. It's what they leave behind in those who survive them.